a lot of the people that currently don't own homes that have been renting for a long time, they're doing it because of lack of education.
Yeah.
But in your shoes, I don't think it's so much about educating your clients, but it's educating the people that we're surrounding with. So me as a average, let's say just Oklahoman or average American.
Yeah.
If I have my, the person I'm voting for saying, hey, we're going to terminate citizenship at birth for these illegal aliens that are coming over and having kids here, because that's not fair, and this could also that's also a path for this person to get citizenship if their kid is a citizen. But like you just said, they have to wait until they're 21 years old. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions of people that are like if I'm truly not understanding and I'm saying, hey, why don't they just come over here legally? Because I even have felt in certain scenarios and different times I've been in my life that there's a relationship that somebody creates with somebody, and then as soon as they find out that they're not here legally, or they're not even a citizen or whatever, it changes.
Yeah.
Right? So how would you educate somebody to truly have them understand, not only that you just said, hey, because the first thing that you tell me that you're coming over here illegally, I'm thinking, oh, you probably don't want to pay the fee. You're having to pay an average of $5,000 to start with, just to turn yourself over to immigration.
Yeah.
So how would you answer that question? Welcome to the Willpower Podcast, where we uncover the secrets of success and share the wisdom of exceptional individuals. I'm your host, William Gomez, and as a real estate professional, I bring you insights from the world of real estate and beyond. Join me as I engage in captivating conversations with incredible guests from diverse backgrounds and industries, from top real estate moguls to trailblazing entrepreneurs and influencers. We dive into the mindsets and habits of successful people. If you love what you hear, don't forget to rate and review. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and enlightened. Live life today on Willpower. Well, Lorena Rivas, I'm so happy that you're here. I'm super excited to get to know you, get to know about your journey as an attorney. It feels a little funny. This is we have people from all different types of careers. Like this week we had a realtor, we had a lady that owns a med spa salon, but you're the third attorney on this podcast. You are an immigration attorney though. So I want to dive deep into that.
Okay.
And actually I say that, but we had one girl, she's known as a solo traveler. She was an attorney, and at 29, she left that to just go and travel the world. And then we had a personal injury attorney, which is actually a good friend of mine. He actually had mentioned you before, Colton Richardson.
Yeah, I know Colton.
Yep. So Lorena, for people that have never heard your name, what's a 1-minute introduction that you'd give us?
Yeah, so I am an immigration attorney here in Tulsa, and that's what I started as my career, as an immigration attorney, but I have now transformed into being an entrepreneur, and I am seeking ways to help the immigrant community to make them realize their American dream, not just in getting lawful status here in the United States, but be able to provide that sense of security for themselves, their family, and their sense of belonging to this community, the U.S. community, the community where they're at. So I am a first-generation Mexican-American. I am a mother. I love CrossFit, and I really just love my company.
Yeah. And so you became an attorney when you were 25 years old?
28. Started law school at 25.
25. So. Okay, so 28, which by the way, is my favorite number. I love, I was born in January 28th, so that's my golden birthday. And so I love the number 28. But so what made you get into law? I mean, you've had to make this this decision early on, like in your early 20s, or I guess not really. I mean, you got into law school in 25. So what made you get into law?
I always wanted to go to law school. I realized the power that lawyers have, the impact they can make on people. when I was very young, around 3 or 4 years old, my father had a very bad accident. He worked in the oil field. He had a bolt about like 10 pounds that fell on his head. I grew up in Western Oklahoma. And so he had to be medi-flighted, and he was disabled for a long time. He was in a coma for a few days. Anyways, we had to get an attorney to do a suit and to get like workers' comp. And I just remembered the power that this man had. This is an attorney from Woodward, Oklahoma. And the respect he gathered, or my parents gave him. My parents, being, Spanish is not their primary language. They're low education immigrants. And so they just relied on this person so much. And this person kind of was like a savior to them and gave them that comfort that we needed, because my father was disabled. He was the primary provider. And we were just so reliant on him. And I just remember how, like I said, how he impacted us and how much it positively impacted us. We relied on him. So I wanted to do that as I was growing up. I realized as I continued to grow up, the need they had for Spanish-speaking individuals to have good guidance, somebody who really, wanted to protect them and take care of them. And I wanted to do that. So probably from a young age, I kind of felt like I was wanting to become a lawyer, but as well, I was blessed with decent grades and intelligence. So I was able to get through college and then apply to law school. Both of those were basically paid off for, which really helped us. I didn't really have to rely on my parents providing for that or large loans. But I realized I had a greater purpose. Not saying that any other jobs doesn't have a great purpose, but I was like, that's my purpose and I can do a lot with it. And I have been so thankful that I did. And I can feel it, that the purpose and the impact.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Sharon Mutual High School. Sharon Mutual is in Northwest Oklahoma. It is a Class C 8-man football school. Okay. So I graduated with 23 people.
So you were probably like one of the very few Hispanic families in town.
Very few. Yes, we were. Absolutely. I grew up with a lot of white people, and it was a benefit, though. I will say, growing up in a small school, because I really got a lot of attention. And this was prior to the current atmosphere that there is now. And so it was very welcoming, but I'm not sure if it is as much welcoming now. But we were ushered in, we were welcomed in, we were part of the community. I certainly felt as part of the community growing up.
And then where did you go to college and law school?
So I went to college at St. Gregory's University, a Catholic school in Shawnee, Oklahoma, that unfortunately no longer is around. But I went there because I wasn't sure if I could go to a really large school. I was still very new to this whole bigger cities, bigger towns, growing up in a very small town. And so I was like, okay, St. Gregory's seems fine. It's a Catholic school. Let's go for it. And I went there. I got my bachelor's degree there. I then moved to Kansas with my husband, and we had our son, and I went and got a master's degree at Fort Hays State University. So I lived in Hays, Kansas for a couple of years, and then we moved to Tulsa. I always wanted to go to law school, but I realized at that time I was like, I need to go to law school where we're living. And so my husband got a job here, and here I am. I went to the University of Tulsa for law school, which I'm so grateful I did. I loved TU. I still love TU. Tomorrow at the football game, I will be there. I will be wearing blue. I will probably be a minority, but I'll be wearing blue.
There we go. I love it. So you said you're a first generation Mexican American. So you were born here, right?
Yes.
And so that's for starters. The second thing, your dad dealt with some type of disability that he was dealing with, and that's how you got introduced to this attorney.
Yeah.
So why immigration?
Yeah, so when I went to law school, I didn't necessarily want to do immigration. I thought that was of course, I'm Spanish speaking, immigration's what they want me to do. But I also thought when I was going to law school, I'm like, I'm going to work for the government. I'm going to be like a district attorney, or I'm going to do something else with the government. So my intention in law school was to do that. And but what happened is that the University of Tulsa at TU Law, they have an immigrant rights clinic where you can actually represent real clients, help them out with their status, and you represent them. You're their attorney. So I did that, and I realized there, I was like, hey, that's where I'm still needed as an immigration attorney. And also, I speak Spanish, and I realized I'm going to have to make a business out of it. So this is where I can make a living out of this. People need immigrant work. I can provide it. I can bring it in. I can attract the customers, the clients. So
how would you describe the Hispanic community here in the Tulsa area? You said you've been doing this for 11 years now. So in the time that in the last decade, how have you seen the Hispanic community evolve, or how has it changed?
Yeah, it has evolved a lot. When I first got here, it was mainly Mexican Americans, or Mexicans, not Americans, but Mexicans. So there were longer term immigrants. They're here for a longer time. They had their children. They were rooted here. A lot of them also had adapted more, like had to learn to speak English because they were forced, because there was less of a population and less services. Here recently, there are more recent arrivals from other Latin American countries, from Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, but also from other educated, I don't want to say educated, I take that back, South American countries, but they're also more highly educated immigrants, Venezuelans, Colombians, that, typically wouldn't settle here. They would settle more in like Miami or New York, but they are coming here to the U.S. because it's a better cost of living for them. So it has changed. It has definitely evolved. There's still plenty of Mexicans here, but it's more, I see more clients now that are recent arrivals here.
Gotcha. And are you talking about mainly like people that are coming from like Venezuela and stuff like that?
Yeah, and there's some Venezuelans too that are coming, definitely. But Venezuelans, Colombians, and Cubans as well, that are settling here in Tulsa, where in the past they would not settle here.
And it's funny that you mentioned the cost of living here. We actually just did a video recently on the top 5 most expensive states and the top 5 least expensive states. And Hawaii came in at number 1, the most expensive. And then California was number 2. And then on the other hand, Mississippi was the cheapest state to live in, which I've actually stopped by Mississippi one time while driving back from New Orleans. Because so unlike you, I was actually born in Mexico. And my wife was actually born in Canada.
Oh, wow. You guys are very...
Yeah. And so we said when we got married that we wanted to go to all 50 states before we started traveling, doing other type of traveling. So we flew down to New Orleans. We had a friend that was living here at the time. He's from Mississippi. And he drove all the way down to New Orleans, and we spent a couple days there. And then we drove back, and we stayed a night in Mississippi. It was... Natchez, Mississippi.
Okay.
And I said, I thought you lived in like one of like the bigger cities here in Mississippi. And he said, this is one of the bigger cities. I was like, what else is in Mississippi?
Yeah.
And he said, there's Jackson. And I said, how much bigger is that? Like, I'm assuming as big as Tulsa.
Yeah.
Because, like Tulsa's not huge.
Yeah.
And he said, oh no. He goes, it's a little bit bigger than this. And I just go,
wow.
Their mall was like a fraction of Tulsa Hills. And for people that don't know what Tulsa Hills is, it's like a shopping center that's like just like a regular shopping center. It's not like anything crazy. Right. But anyways, yeah. So so I was actually, it's funny because, you are going to be episode like number 50 something, actually 57, I believe. Yeah. Cause Alyssa was 56. That was ending season 2. We do the seasons by 28 episodes.
Oh,
see, I told you. I love
love that 28. Yes.
And but believe it or not, I've actually have never really talked about this. Well, for one, people don't ever even know that I was born in Mexico.
Yeah.
And I was a guest on a different podcast that I kind of became a little bit more open about this. But I moved here whenever I was like I was about like 8.5 or 9. I was in 4th grade. Grew up in Sand Springs. I knew 0 English. It was a culture shock for me because the food tasted different. I didn't know, in Mexico, there's not very many like black people. So like I thought whenever I would see black people that they were speaking like a different language than English. Like it was just completely.
What part of Mexico?
Jalapa, Veracruz.
Oh, Veracruz. Okay.
Yeah. So really south.
South.
And so I really wanted to just have a conversation with you to, one, learn about your success and what's kept you in this career so long, but then also about like the people that you've been able to help because, I mainly have grown up with white people. I've never had a Hispanic girlfriend because I grew up in Sand Springs and so it's just, people always, especially here in Oklahoma, we're a red state. And it's funny. Anytime that's like an election year, for me, I look at things that are going to impact me and my family, right? And so I just feel like there's a lot of myths and a lot of misconceptions of a lot of people that are coming here for either an opportunity or to flee their country because they might be, potentially get murdered in the next, month or weeks or whatever. So talk to me a little bit about some of the people that you've helped over the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely. So my first client from at the University of Tulsa College of Law was William Jean-Jacques, and he was a Haitian person who was detained for a drug conviction, but he was a lawful permanent resident. His mother was a U.S. citizen. He came over as a refugee, but got status here, and he had these children, and it was the most it was my first case, so I felt so connected to this client despite never meeting him because he was detained in Louisiana. Anyways, we were able to get him out, had him able to get his lawful permanent residency reinstated. He applied for citizenship, custody of his children. But so he was a long-term person. And the crazy thing is if he was going to be deported, removed back to his country in Haiti, this was during the time where the earthquake just happened. So it was like horrible conditions. And Haiti's, as we all know, Haiti is unfortunately Haiti. And so their government was just also not treating deportees really well and putting them in awful conditions. But so there's that kind of case. But then there's also cases of like Maria. I'm going to say Maria just because for obvious reasons. Jane Doe, but we're going to make it a Spanish one, Maria.
I love it.
So Maria, she's been here in the United States for like 20 years, has 3 children, and her child is over 21. She's got a 21. And that's a misconception a lot of people have, that they think that just because you have children born here in the United States, you can get status here. I mean, no, there's no anchor babies. There's no such thing, because the anchor just doesn't exist when you have to wait 21 years for your child to possibly petition for you until you be able to get status based on that child. So it's a long wait. And a lot of our clients have waited that time. But during that time, they have continued to work. They have purchased homes. They have paid taxes. Their children are going to school, graduating, going to college. So that's a typical client of mine that has been here long term. They're trying to do the right thing, but for an ability to get a Social Security number, then they can't get a driver's license, and then they're still kind of living in the shadows, but trying to obey the laws as much as they can. But a lot of them are long-term residents here, very valuable to the community. I have some I represent a lot of clients have been victims of abuse or victims of crime, where they have been assaulted, armed robbery, and Hispanics, because their inability to get a Social Security number, many of them don't have bank accounts. And so people who like to rob know that they carry a lot of amounts of cash usually, because they're not able to really keep it in a place and go deposit or have direct deposit. So there are a lot here in Tulsa. They are targeted as victims of armed robbery. And there's something that's called the U visa for victims of crime that gives them a pathway to residency, a pathway to citizenship if they call the police and cooperate with them. And this was instituted through a law because so many people felt like if they called police, even though they were victim, they would be picked up or deported. So they wouldn't be calling the police for fear and continuing to live in the shadows. So, I have a client who her son was a victim of sexual abuse. And she, despite being a single mom, called up, and now she has status here, which allows her to stay here in the United States and to be able to help her son recover from sexual abuse. So it's a variety, but all of my clients, they all have stories. And as an attorney, I feel it's my duty to tell their story. That's kind of something that people don't realize attorneys are, but we're storytellers. We story, whether we're in front of a judge or a jury. Our duty is to portray the facts of the case in a way that obviously helps out our clients. And so my clients all have stories, and most of them, it also includes crossing over to the United States illegally. Yes, illegally. Many of them do. But the reason why, people are like, why don't they come over here lawfully? Why don't they do that? By gosh, this person came over lawfully. They're the good immigrants. Why aren't these people? Trust me, if there was a way they could come over lawfully, they would 100% do that. If there was a fine they could pay to come over here lawfully, a fee, they would do that. those people who are undocumented, by gosh, if you would charge them $10,000 to gain status here in the United States, they would pay it. They would rather be paying that. They realize it's a large amount, it's a sacrifice, but they would do it because they're already sacrificing so much to come to the United States. The journey here in the United States, especially for the people who are traveling from like Nicaragua or Honduras or Venezuelans, I mean, that's a treacherous pathway they have to go. It's not easy. It's not something they're like, yay, let's just go to America. It's a tough choice they have to do. They have to give up so much and they have to put so much at risk. So if there's a way that these individuals can come over here lawfully and like pay something, they would do it. They would rather pay you guys than pay a coyote. But yeah, those people here in the United States who are already here without status, I mean, they want so much to be part of the American community and American society and to be able to be fully contribute.
Can you just give us a quick definition of what a coyote is for people that are listening?
Yeah, so it would be somebody, the quick, simple definition is a smuggler, but I think they're more like, they don't really are smuggling some person in. Usually in the cases now, they're more of a guide, but they charge for it. So they're charging large amounts of fees for it. And there's been a lot more badness in their smuggling, is what I can say. Many of them are associated with the cartels in Mexico. Sometimes they like kidnap individuals and they hold them for ransom to collect more fees. But they're the guy, they're the smuggler, they're the person that people charge to get them over to the border. But right now, I mean, it's crazy. People are paying so much money to help these smugglers to cross them into the United States. Like they actually cross them the river. But then afterwards they tell them, hey, go turn yourself into immigration. And I'm like, what are you paying? You're paying somebody just to get you in trouble, to catch you. But
what is the average fee that they're paying?
I've heard it could be like $5,000. I want to say like $5,000. It's become a higher amount now.
Which $5,000, whether you're in Mexico, Guatemala, all these places, I mean, that's a substantial amount of money.
It's a lot. Can you imagine the United States if they got that money? I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people. You want money, U.S.? There's money there.
So it's an election year. We're coming to an election year, and one of the Republican candidates, one of the things out of the many things that he said he wants to do is terminate citizenship at birth if your parents are not citizens.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that are supporting these people, they are for it because they're just like, hey, this is what we need to do in order to fix this problem. But so here's the thing. I do home loans for people to be able to help them buy homes. Yeah. And what I found out is that a lot of the people that currently don't own homes that have been renting for a long time, they're doing it because of lack of education.
Yeah. But
in your shoes, I don't think it's so much about educating your clients, but it's educating the people that we're surrounding with. Absolutely. So me as a average, let's say just Oklahoman or average American.
Yeah.
If I have my, the person I'm voting for saying, hey, we're going to terminate citizenship at birth for these illegal aliens that are coming over and having kids here, because that's not fair, and this could also that's also a path for this person to get citizenship if their kid is a citizen. But like you just said, they have to wait until they're 21 years old. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions of people that are like if I'm truly not understanding and I'm saying, hey, why don't they just come over here legally? Because I even have felt in certain scenarios and different times I've been in my life that there's a relationship that somebody creates with somebody, and then as soon as they find out that they're not here legally or they're not even a citizen or whatever, it changes.
Yeah.
Right? So how would you educate somebody to truly have them understand, not only that you just said, hey, because the first thing that you tell me that you're coming over here illegally, I'm thinking, oh, you probably don't want to pay the fee. You're having to pay an average of $5,000 to start with, just to turn yourself over to immigration.
Yeah.
So how would you answer that question?
And this is a question I get often. I get a lot of employers, a lot of what I would say good old boys call me and say, hey, I got this worker. He's fantastic. He's a good Mexican. How can I help him get legal? And I think to myself, man, boy, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the way you vote, but because it's all remained misconceptions. They think that that these people haven't attempted to get a lawful status. Many of these individuals, I won't say many, but yeah, I would say many to some to many individuals have tried to come over here lawfully. Maybe they have a U.S. citizen sibling here who has already submitted a petition, an application for them. And it's simply a matter of like waiting for this visa to become available so they can lawfully come over here to the United States. So I'm a U.S. citizen. I petitioned for my brother who stayed back in Mexico, let's say. Great. It's a pathway. That is a pathway to get status. I've done everything right. My brother has remained in Mexico, hasn't violated anything. But here's the thing. He has to wait like 22 years for there to be a visa available for him to enter into the United States lawfully. 22 years. That's separation of family, and who knows what kind of condition this brother is in. So the question to many of these people who maybe accuse this person of coming over here illegally and doing wrong is, if you were living in a bad condition and you were raising your children without opportunities, would you come over here illegally, or would you stay over there and wait those 22 years that that's a lifetime. That is a lifetime that for many, and especially your children can age out, and so they wouldn't be able to come over here in the United States. So so one of the misconception is that coming over here lawfully is a feasible solution, because so many are trying to come over here lawfully, but it's such a long wait because of our broken immigration laws that are just unreasonable, just don't make sense. Another one is that that these people want to break the law. They don't want to break the law. They want to follow the law. They certainly want to follow law, except again, for many, there is no pathway. But if there was a pathway, they would do that. That's why anytime administrations open up programs, they are bombarded with applications. The DACA program, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, had so many applicants. There's so many more that want to apply for it.
So something that I want to be very vulnerable with, that I grew up really being like, it was kind of like something that I just kept from people quite a bit because of me growing up. People, well, for one, not even thinking that I was Mexican. Two, definitely not thinking that I was not born here. Mm-hmm. But I'm actually a DACA recipient. And so since you brought it up, go ahead and explain to people what that is.
So DACA is it was a program that was started by President Obama. It was an executive decision, executive order. So it wasn't a law passed by Congress, but it was for, DACA stand for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, for the dreamers, for the kids who were brought over by their parents to the United States and who are without status. DACA did not give citizenship, did not get a lawful residency. It was a temporary, basically protection of a 2-year, so a work authorization where these kids could finally get a social security number, could get a driver's license, and it's something that they would continue to renew and renew. But it didn't give them a pathway to lawful permanent residence or citizenship. So,
and you said it was an executive order.
Executive order.
What happened as soon as Obama left office?
As soon as it happened, then Trump tried to cancel that order. So he tried to issue a rescission? No, whatever. He canceled it. And so then there was lawsuits back and forth about it by some states saying, hey, you can't cancel it because it's been in place. You didn't properly notify us about the cancellation. So it was sued there. So during the Trump administration, it was in lawsuits. So they were not really accepting new applicants for it. So if you had DACA, you could continue to renew it, but also with that fear and uncertainty of what's going to happen, but new applicants couldn't. And then when President Biden came up, he tried to reopen it, but then other states sued it. So again, it's back in limbo in the federal court system, being sued whether it's a lawful power that the president did. And
you did a great job at explaining it, but what I want to mix those two conversations and the same people that are saying, why don't they just come here legally?
Yeah.
One. And then the people that are like, for example, like whenever they see me and they're like, oh, you were born in Mexico. And then they're like, oh, you're a citizen. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not a citizen. I'm here on a work authorization. Mm-hmm. And then they just think, okay, cool. Well, then you're good. You're paying your taxes. You're good.
Yeah.
But
you're still in a limbo.
Yeah. People don't understand that. And on top of that, I've been married 7 years. So it took, this was on me as well too. It took about probably 24 months before we started a process for a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
That I am like on, it's just so long to where I just can't even explain that to people because it's just so complex. But when people see like somebody like me,
you're the American dream right there. You're Americanized. You speak great English. Yeah.
Guess what? If somebody was to come into office next year and with something changing,
yeah,
I mean, my life could get turned upside down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess that's part of the reason why I never really talk about it, just because of I've experienced it myself. Whenever like people see me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like Will, this, and that," and then that, I feel like not everybody, but I've felt it before. But not only that, but I think that people just don't really understand.
They have no idea. That's sad because our politicians, our people who are making these decisions about people's lives, don't even understand the process. They don't understand how the laws that were written by Congress even work because they just don't make sense. These are archaic. These are old laws that the last immigration reform happened in 1997 with President Clinton. I mean, my parents got lawful status thanks to President Reagan. They were able to be protected by amnesty. I'm thankful for that Republican president because he realized you can't just shut the door for immigration. And immigrants are so needed and they're so valued. I mean, you're a prime example of it. Look how much you have helped people. Look at this great company you founded. You have inspired people. Well, you know, as much as you are amazing, there are a lot of Wills out there that are doing an amazing job as well without having a permanent solution for their immigration status.
One of the big stories that I saw whenever Trump came in, and he was trying to take that away, and you know, media loves negative headlines as far as like just to try to scare people, try to, you know. So one of them was like, you know, are these millions of people going to be, you know, sent back? And one of them was an immigration attorney that was a DACA recipient. And this is a person that not only is somebody that, as you would call it, let's say they're on their path or they've reached their American dream, but they're also helping people get what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that could, you know, could be instantly taken away.
Absolutely. I mean, during the Trump administration, it was a really dark time for me, I would say, because it was, instead of right now where we're like helping people get status because we can affirmatively file things without like great fear of like being a harsher graders is what I could say. During that time, it was like fighting the court system, fighting deportations, going to the detention centers, going to the border to all these people who are detained. Like it was more on the defensive because we were just trying, you know, getting somebody out from detention was a win. Getting them a $10,000 to $15,000 bond so they could get out after, you know, being stopped for a traffic light or something. So it was different. It was definitely a defensive way. I mean, my business was going and I still had work, but that's not the kind of work I want necessarily. I want the work where I'm like, you know, we're winning cases in court. We're getting people status. We're helping asylees. We're helping long-term residents here. Yeah. And providing people that I'm sure it was for you when you got that Social Security number. It was a magical moment.
My Social Security number, but not only that, but just I remember my driver's license because I remember like being in high school and everybody getting their driver's license, and me and my sister, both my sister graduated from OSU, and of course she's in the same boat. She's been. It's funny because she's the opposite of me. She's been like super vocal about it and very like, you know, and I don't know why. Like to me, it's just always, hit different with me. And it's helped, you know, and it's helped me in the ways that it has. But I remember when we both got our driver's license and it was like one of the biggest, like, you know, so tell me what's one of like the hardest clients that you've had to help? Like what's one of the toughest that you can still remember out of all? I know you told me about your first client, but I just like what's one of a client or a family that you helped that for people to really maybe understand this a little bit more too?
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one's my hardest ones because we've done it. My firm, we are not afraid to take risks. I kind of changed my philosophy on lawyering. I used to be very like cautious. I'd be like, we might lose that case, so let's not take that case. Or let's not push the buttons for the immigration judge or use this by offering this argument or trying to appeal this. But now I'm all about pushing the envelope. I don't work for the government. I don't represent the government. I represent the client. So I'm going to take those hard cases and we're going to win the hard cases. I guess it would be, that one's a hard one. It was a long one because I appealed it up to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. So it would have been this client. He came to me. It came in as a student, and he was Nigerian. He came over as a student here, and he was had work authorization as a student. You can get that with a student visa. And so he's working, but then he got married to a U.S. citizen. They started the immigration process, but because, he wanted to save money and he didn't use an attorney, so he submitted some applications and forms, but not the complete ones to get him status quick. So he was in the process of getting status, doing everything, married to a U.S. citizen, working properly, not working illegally. He was an engineer, and he lived in Houston. And so during that time, he went to visit a buddy who lived in Laredo. So on his way back to Laredo, there was a checkpoint, and he didn't realize that his work authorization card had expired. And so he didn't have the proper documentation. They detained him. He had no criminal record. He was detained from the Houston area, but they transported him because ICE does this. They like to isolate people and take them away from their community. They transported him to Tulsa here and detained him here at David L. Moss, just with all the criminals, everybody. He hired an attorney who didn't know that immigration judge we dealt with. He's a really hard judge in Dallas, and because our court system is in Dallas, Texas, and he was denied a bond, and so that's when he came to me. And so he had already been denied a bond. We tried to fight his case, but during the course of this, unfortunately, his wife kind of was like, all right, I don't want to deal with this. So I'm going to step out and leave you. So she left him in the process. And, as we started talking to him, we realized that, she was pretty abusive to him. Maybe not physically abusive, but verbally and mentally abusive to him, which is unfortunate. A lot of those relationships when somebody is an immigrant and maybe, not with citizenship or lawful permanent residence, where they also kind of make threats. So she was threatening him of like, you know what, I should just call immigration on you and stuff like that. Anyway, so he was detained. We tried to fight his case, but because she wasn't cooperating when I took over, we lost the case. And so he remained detained. We appealed the case to the Board of Immigration Appeals. During that time, we filed what's called a VAWA application, the Violence Against Women's Act petition, where we show that he was married to a U.S. citizen and abused, and mental abuse and verbal abuse, emotional abuse is sufficient for the VAWA. But those VAWAs take about 2 years to get approved. So during those 2 years, he was detained the whole time. And we appealed.
This is an engineer.
An engineer, educated. He had no criminal record. No criminal record when that he was determined not to be given a bond.
That had probably paid in the six figures in taxes in this country as well.
Yeah. And he tried to do everything right. Like he submitted the applications. He was such a good guy.
So he's in there for 2 years.
He was there for 2 years. We had to appeal it to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. During that course, his VAWA application gets approved. And so then we reach out to ICE, and they finally decide to release him at that time. After we had, submitted this new application and it got approved. But he got released under conditions, so he had to continue going to check-ins. And right now we're still... He's out.
And at those check-ins, at any time you can get deported. Is
right.
That correct?
They could pick him up and maybe not deported, but detained. They certainly could detain him and realize, you know what, we don't want you being free. We think you're a risk now, a flight risk or whatever. And so we're going to detain you.
But that the difference between that as two, and let's say that there were no check-ins and all that stuff, that if you are in jail in 2 years for framed for murder or stealing or whatever, and then you finally get exonerated and you get out and try to get your life back. But even if there were no check-ins for him, it's not like they give him U.S. citizenship.
No,
and then he's like,
absolutely not.
You're back to the same point that
he
you were before he was driving back to Houston.
Yeah,
which is like, I'm still needing, and now it's probably even worse because he's not married to a U.S. citizen.
No, I mean he's got some kind of protection because being approved from this VAWA application, you are kind of put in deferred action, similar to DACA. So you're kind of protected, but at the same time, it could get pulled any time.
Yeah.
And so he's he's out. He has work authorization. He has this approval. We're now trying to we filed a motion to reopen with the court to reopen his immigration court case to then get his deportation order vacated. But because the court systems are how they are, this has been pending a year and nothing. So it's just, there's such a huge backlog and such a, the system is so broken in so many ways. There's not enough staff, but then also there's just not enough care to even move these cases. And it's like, I remember when he got out, I was like, oh my gosh, they're releasing him. Like, wow. Because also they do this because they know these immigrants don't want to be detained. And so they hope they give up. And they give up and they just go back to their country. And that they want him to give up. They put him, but I was shocked when I'm like, how can you not release this guy? He has no criminal record, nothing. He was just driving. So
the other thing too that I've noticed is outside of just like people here, like you're talking about the people that are born here, like first generation Americans, Mexican Americans, or wherever country you're from, is that they are limited to the opportunities that are out there because of how their parents are treated as well too. Yeah. The amount of I'd read some stats. So I'm part of the National Association of like Hispanic real estate professionals, and there was this like crazy stat that like just in Tulsa area, not counting Oklahoma City, there is less than 10% out of all the millennial Hispanic people that are here, there's less than 10% of them that know that they can buy a house.
Wow.
And that's because you grow up as an American, regular American, thinking like, oh, well, I just graduated college, I got a good job. My parents, they bought a couple houses, like it's probably time for me to buy a house. And you don't even think like, is it going to be hard for me to get approved to get a home?
Right.
Or you just kind of think like, I need to buy a house because that's what you do. And then on the other hand, even if you grow up here as a U.S. citizen and you grow up however you grew up, like, moving a few times, renting every time, maybe then at that point, you that thought just never crosses your mind that it's like, hey, it's time for me to not only buy a house, but start building wealth.
Yeah. No, I mean, because also the parents or the immigrants are, with that mentality of like, I got to work and save as much money possible because who knows what might happen and I might be sent back to my home country. So I have to be able to be mobile with my funds and mobile with what I've worked here for. So many of them are like, why purchase a house? This country doesn't even want me here. And then the fear is again, like what happens if I get picked up, so
yeah. Man, I'm so thankful that you got to come on. I only tell this to a few people, but I feel like I could talk to you for a lot longer. And I know that I really wanted to get to know really a lot more of your personal story, but I'll wrap up with this, that I'm a huge believer that everybody out there knows what they do. So any other attorney, any other loan officer out there can tell you that that's what they do. That's their title.
Right.
Very few of them know how to do it.
Yes.
Clients that we both helped, I guarantee you, they go to another attorney, they go to another loan officer, they're not getting that house. They're not getting that status. And only the top people in their field know why they do it. And this entire podcast, I think you've told me why you do what you do. Yeah. And the amount of passion that you have for what you do just came through. And I'm so thankful for that. One of the last things that I like to ask people is, what is the biggest advice that you've ever received in your life that has kind of kept you moving forward?
So many times as a person or as a female, you're all about like breaking that glass ceiling or reaching this, the peak. And what I like to think about is there is no sky. So when somebody says, hey, the sky's the limit, there is no sky. You can continue to go higher and improve, make things better, reach greater goals. There's nothing to stop you.
And I think that you're walking the talk with, you're saying that you recently transitioned into something to try to help people even more. So, man, I'm so happy that you came on. For anybody that wants to find you, where can they find you?
So we have 2 locations. We have one in Tulsa, and we're just about to open our Oklahoma City location coming Monday. But we're located in Admiral and Lewis in the Kendall Whittier neighborhood for the time being. But I did purchase a building. It's going to be at on Yale and Highway 51 or the BA Expressway. But we help clients all over the country, so I don't limit myself there. So all they have to do is find our website, Rivas and Associates, rivasassociates.com. You see our telephone number. We can help clients all over the U.S., all over the country, every city, every state. But find us on the web. Also follow me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. I do a lot of lives. It's mainly Spanish speaking. It is Spanish. That's my ideal client, Spanish speaking. That's who I connect with most. But you'll learn a lot from it.
What's your handle?
Arroba at Abogada Lorena is I think the one on Instagram, and then might be Abogada Lorena Rivas. Abogada meaning attorney. So yeah.
There we go. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I can't wait for people to listen to this combo.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.